Hi, good afternoon, friends and colleagues, and welcome to the second webinar of the USAID and Reliance Foundation Women Connect India Speaker Series. Today, we talk about the Indian digital ecosystem and its accessibility in rural and marginalized communities across the country. My name is Ritesh Datta. I'm a gender and technology advisor at DAI Global and your host for the series. Thank you for joining us. Women Connect Challenge is Women Connect Challenge India is the national version of the Women Connect Challenge initiative by USAID. The national version has been rolled out jointly by USAID and Reliance Foundation, and its national counterpart supports initiatives targeted at facilitating women's access to digital tools and solutions. The speaker series planned as part of the India Challenge was designed for the India Challenge winners, that is all of you. Each month, we invite domain specialists to come talk to you, our grantees, and to bolster your understanding of about gender digital divide and to help design impactful programs. The upcoming monthly webinars planned on critical topics as part of this series are digital solutions for gender digital divide program design, which we hold on the November 24th. And then we will talk about enabling with digital technology and access to government schemes, which will be held on December 15th. Coming back to today, today we talk about digital infrastructure targeted at people outside the urban pockets in India. As on March 2021, some about 825 plus million Indians were accessing the internet. However, in a country of 1.4 billion, that still leaves out about 41% of the population outside this boom. Rural internet density in 2019 was about 25.3 internet subscribers per 100 people compared to 97.9 in urban areas. Although 66% of the country's population still lives in its villages. Access remains unequal across the gender digital divide, across genders, disproportionately affecting women. Digital infrastructure obviously is a critical component of ensuring access, and numerous public and private sector organizations are working with and for rural communities to fill this gap in the Indian digital ecosystem. To share more about this subject, we have with us today Ms. Vishakha Saigal. She's the President and Head of Strategic Initiatives, Regulatory Policy and Research at Reliance Jio, and Mr. Michael Gingold, co-founder and Director of Strategy and Operations at AirJaldi. Thank you, Vishakha and Mikey, for joining us. We also have with us today representatives from the 10 awardee organizations of the first USAID and Reliance Foundation Women Connect Challenge India program. Thank you for making the time. We will hear from our esteemed speakers in a minute, after which we will have an open Q&A round. So do jot down your questions while you hear our speakers so that you can ask them at the end. Let me also remind you that the hashtag for this program is WCC India. Please remember to keep posting content on your social media platforms, which you're active on during and after this webinar, and use hashtag WCC India on all your posts. So to start the conversation today, I would now like to introduce our first speaker, Ms. Vishakha Saigal. As I mentioned earlier, she is the Vice President and Head of Strategic Initiatives at Reliance Jio. She has extensive consulting experience across telecom, technology, education, and media sectors with both domestic and international clients, and has been vocal about digital gender divide in India in various national and international forums as part of her current role. Please join me in welcoming Vishakha. Vishakha, I know you're taking you have some more work tonight, so I'm really grateful that you took the time to speak to us despite your hectic schedule. Also, please note that Vishakha looks forward to answering your questions at the Q&A session later. Keep your notepads handy and jot down your questions as you hear us speak. Over to you, Vishakha.
Thank you, Ritesh, for the kind introduction. It's a pleasure to join you and Michael and all the other members for this very pertinent session. And the theme for discussion, which is around technology ecosystem for India's rural and marginalized communities, is very important, especially in the current times. Building and enhancing digital ecosystem for rural India is immensely critical for a nation like India, which has more than 65% of its population residing in rural parts of the country. The pandemic has further reinforced and amplified the need to have equitable and adequate access to communication infrastructure for all citizens. And this requires unwavering commitment and focus from both government as well as private sector. If we look at the digital landscape in India, over the last few years, we've made rapid and remarkable strides in technology evolution from older voice-centric technologies to 4G. It took around 25 years to create the 2G network infrastructure in India. In comparison, if you look at the 4G trajectory, in just a span of 4 or 5 years, we managed to build extensive coverage of our 4G networks across every nook and corner of the country. Thanks to expansive digital infrastructure, low data tariffs, affordable devices, there has been unprecedented uptake of digital services, making India an undisputed leader in mobile data consumption. Uh, when it comes to accelerating adoption of mobile internet, Geo has been a key driving force behind this. It was actually Geo's launch that paved the way for widespread and affordable broadband access in the country. We've made massive investments in building state-of-art, next-generation digital ecosystem in India, and have infused more than $50 billion towards this since inception. In line with our vision to provide equitable and inclusive access, we have built robust infrastructure in rural areas, and today Geo's 4G LTE network covers more than 99% of our population. From government's end, also, there has been huge thrust on connecting unserved and underserved populations. Programs like Digital India and BharatNet, they've certainly contributed in connecting rural and geographically remote villages in the country. Under BharatNet, which is touted as world's largest rural broadband project, more than 1.5 lakh gram panchayats have already been made service ready. Of course, this project faced its own set of challenges and delays, but nevertheless, the government is working to connect the remaining gram panchayats by 2023. As a part of Digital India initiative, government has undertaken several measures to advance digital ecosystem in rural areas. It has created an extensive network of common service centers, which are actually technology-enabled access points for delivery of e-governance and public utility services in rural parts of the country. Apart from this, there has been a thrust on creating large-scale public digital platforms. Platforms like Aadhaar, UPI, and the recently launched CoWIN, they are the one of the largest in the world, and they have become the bedrock for India's digital ecosystem. Uh, all these collected efforts have resulted into deeper proliferation and increased adoption of internet from all segments across the country. However, there is still a sizable population which is digitally unconnected and remains devoid of the leapfrog opportunities and benefits that are provided by the digital revolution. The pandemic has further exposed the digital gaps in the country and increased likelihood of isolation and economic inequalities for people, particularly from rural and marginalized segments. Women, especially from rural communities, happen to be on the wrong side of the digital divide and are facing inclusion on both social and economic fronts. There are a lot of impediments that need to be addressed if we really have to bridge the prevailing gender gap in India. Uh, Ramping up investments in digital infrastructure to further serve the remote parts of the country is paramount. In relation to this, I would like to highlight a very important aspect. If we look at the overall annual spending on telecom infrastructure in India, bulk of the spending is done by the private sector, which is around 80 to 85%. This is very unlike most large economies like US, UK, or even Japan, wherein the percentage of government contribution to telecom investments is as high as 50%. Even if we look at the national broadband mission that was launched by the government with a vision of providing broadband access to all the villages by 2022, it envisages an investment of $100 billion. However, 90% of the investments are expected to be catalyzed by the private sector. That is why it becomes so important to have a conducive policy environment which enables private sector to keep up the investment momentum that is needed for expanding digital infrastructure in remote and far-flung areas. In this direction, the recent policy reforms announced by the government, they are quite timely and will provide the desired impetus for advancing communication infrastructure, which is a prerequisite for closing the digital divide in the country. Uh, and as far as Geo is concerned, we are totally committed to plug the remaining gaps in our reach. There are very, very minimal parts of India which are not covered yet. Most of the uncovered population is in challenging geographies such as Naxalite areas, forest regions, hilly and snowbound areas. And that also we are progressively and gradually aiming for coverage. Uh, Having said that, if you ask me, we should be more concerned about the usage gap, which is more profound than the coverage gap in India. This essentially means that despite living in areas having broadband connectivity, people are outside the digital realm. Uh, this can be attributed to multiple barriers and challenges faced by people in accessing digital services. In my opinion, lack of digital skills and awareness, they are the biggest deterrents to adoption of broadband services. They make it very, very challenging to integrate technology in the everyday lives of people, especially from rural and marginalized communities. Uh, Another very prominent barrier is lack of locally relevant content and services. Besides these, the deep-rooted societal norms and the cultural biases which disproportionately impact women in India further deter internet usage in the country. Uh, at Geo, we understand that addressing the usage gap is critical for fostering greater digital inclusion and for getting more people, especially women, online. Our commitment towards this is absolute and reflects in our overall business, services, and product strategy. In an endeavor to create greater acceptance for digital services, we are focusing more and more on creating locally relevant digital solutions which are in tune to the needs of rural communities and local communities. We've built extensive capabilities in frontier technologies like artificial intelligence, IoT, machine learning, NLP, voice recognition tools, which we are extensively leveraging to create best-in-class digital solutions and products in areas of agriculture, livestock, health, education, government tech. All these are meaningful for rural communities and can help them mitigate the challenges that they face in their daily lives. Uh, Another important aspect that we've recognized and realized is that in order to further democratize internet, we need to incorporate vernacular aspects in digital solutions. We are thus working towards ensuring that more and more of our applications, products, and digital tools support regional languages. For instance, our geophone supports more than 22 Indic languages. Our collaboration tools like GeoMeet, important applications like MyGeo, Geo Set-Top Box, all are available in key vernacular languages. And this has already started resulting in increased uptake and adoption from rural segments. Uh, in addition, addressing device affordability barrier has always been a priority for us. And we've been quite successful in doing so, thanks to our GeoPhone, which has been the gateway to digital world for more than 100 million subscribers. In our endeavor to further enhance the ecosystem for affordable devices, we are very soon launching our GeoPhone Next in collaboration with Google. So this is going to be a fully featured low-cost smartphone designed for Indian users. And potentially, these users will experience the smartphone for the first time in their lives. We are confident that this will go in a long way in increasing digital adoption, especially from rural and economically weaker segments for whom device affordability is still a significant barrier. And we're also hopeful that this will fast track the transition of around 300 million 2G subscribers that we have in the country, and they are transitioned to near technologies like 4G. Beside these, we're also working on unique ways to address the hurdles and challenges in distribution and last mile limitations. In this regard, amidst the lockdown, we had launched our Geo Associate program, which enables our customers to provide recharge, activation services for their friends, families, and even other community members, and using our GeoPOS Lite application. So this has not only provided a convenient access and minimized impact of lockdowns on a lot of people, but also provided an opportunity for income generation for many people. This has been a very successful program for us with around 1 million active users on a monthly basis. And what makes this program really special is that most of the top performers in this program are actually women. Uh, then taking cognizance of the prevailing skill gaps that we have in the country, we have majorly increased our thrust on digital skills and awareness programs targeting women. We are closely working with organizations like GSMA to understand digital skill gaps and deliver need-based market-specific trainings to different segments, particularly rural women, so as to augment their capacity to make meaningful use of digital tools and digital access. To put it all together, we are 100% committed to bridge and plug the remaining gaps in access and adoption. And we'll continue to explore innovative and scalable ways for bringing more people from rural and marginalized segments in the digital realm. Now, specifically talking about the Women Connect India Challenge, needless to say, it's a very important program for us. Have gone through all the projects which each of the 10 selected organizations will be driving. And I see so much of potential in each and every project. In fact, there is a lot of synergy between some of the projects and work that we are doing at Geo. Themes such as digital literacy for women, improving access to government schemes, digital classrooms, livestock and dairy solutions, they are quite aligned to our internal initiatives and digital platforms. For instance, we have a Geo EasyGov platform, which is our G2C solution for discovery and eligibility check for various government welfare schemes. More than 350 central and state government schemes are already integrated with this platform. Then we have a Geo Krishi platform, which is our smart agri solution built to digitize end-to-end agriculture activity and includes many important services like farm management, IoT-based precision advisory. We are also building our IoT-based dairy and livestock platform for digitization of dairy management services with the intent to increase or improve the yield from livestock. Health and education are another important areas where we've created compelling digital applications and tools. So yes, there is definitely a lot of possibility for cross-leveraging and collaborating. We will be happy to connect the respective organizations with our product and technology leaders within Geo to explore opportunities for alignment or for any guidance that may be needed at any stage of the project. But be rest assured, we will provide all the support that is required to all the organizations. And on that note, I would conclude by just re-emphasizing that digital infrastructure is absolutely essential catalyst for sustainable growth and development. Thus, accelerating delivery of digital services for unserved and underserved populations has to be a topmost priority for us. As a nation, we need to ensure that benefits of digital advancement are permeated across all segments, irrespective of gender, geographic location, economic strata, or any other demographic parameter. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishakha. I think that was really helpful. You covered a wide spectrum. You talked about the barriers. You talked about all the things that you are doing at Reliance Jio. You talked about how we can sort of leverage your work to sort of strengthen our work that we're doing within Women Connect Challenge and beyond in our projects as well. Very helpful. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of questions. I, for one, have written down a few questions for you already. And I look forward to continuing the conversation at the end of the day during the Q&A bit. So thank you again. I would now like to welcome our second speaker for today's session, Michael Gingold, or Mikey as we fondly call him, co-founder, director, strategy operations for Airjaldi. Mikey was born and raised in Israel and has close to 30 years of experience working in development projects across India, Indonesia, Cambodia, Nepal, and Israel. Mikey is currently based in Dharamshala in the state of Himachal Pradesh with his wonderful family, from where he runs Air Jaldi, an internet service provider company which specializes in offering connectivity solutions in rural areas. Do remember to note down your questions for him as he speaks, which I'm sure he will be happy to answer during the Q&A session. Over to you, Mikey.
Thanks, Ritesh, for the introduction. Hard act to follow on size, if nothing else. Geo is not a small company, and the achievements are quite impressive. In any event, what I plan to do, and I will share my screen first, and please let me know when you see it. Can everyone see the screen? Okay.
Yes, yeah.
All right. What I'll try and do is the following things in the 15 minutes or so that I have. I want us to, of course, give you a bit of view of what Air Jaldi is and what we do. The second thing is I will unfortunately repeat some of the statistics that were already shared, and the idea here is to kind of set the stage to the problem statements that we are dealing with together, the gender challenge. This, as I said, will follow a sort of a description of our work, which has been going on for the last 12 years. We will then talk about how we approach, we are part of the WGDP program, the USAID supported connectivity and empowerment program. So I'll talk a little bit about our approach to the same set of problems that I assume all the recipients are dealing with in one way or the other. And of course, I hope you find it useful, and I do look forward to your questions. So what does Air Jaldi do? Air Jaldi is a rural internet service provider. In the telco parlance, it's an ISP. We've been in existence, as I said, from 2007 by some counts. We are operating in 9 states in India, covering about 80,000 square kilometers, roughly about 200,000 users and beneficiaries. And we serve all segments. And when I say all segments, a lot of internet service providers tend to focus on one segment. You know, it could be the private, could be the institutions, could be what have you. We really, our philosophy from the get-go was to connect rural India. And if we've made the effort, a rather considerable effort of reaching a rural area, the idea is that connecting additional customers, small or big, is a relatively smaller effort or smaller marginal effort and a great marginal benefit. And the way we actually work is we take connectivity from what's called the upstream, from a fiber infrastructure more often than not, although it could be wireless as well, which belongs to the telecommunication companies in India. Jio, of course, is one of them. There's Airtel, there's BSNL, there's Vodafone Idea. And we take that connectivity and extend it further into our rural areas. And we do it using basically whatever is available to us in the toolbox. And when I say the toolbox, I mean sets of technologies. We're not going to talk too much about technologies, but the idea is that we use wireless technologies and wire technology, fiber. In many areas in India, and Vishaka has pointed out to that, fiber or wired connectivity poses a challenge. It's not only snow-covered and rain-soaked and desert-swept areas. There are other constraints in India to access of fiber. In any event, this has been our bread and butter for the last 12 years. We've gained quite considerable experience in that. In addition to the provision of connectivity itself, we also provide what we call enabling services. This goes all the way from simple value-added services, which are just sets of tools, that goes all the way from entertainment to technical solutions and enabling services. And I'll talk maybe a little bit more about that in just a sec. A lot of times in rural areas, and those of you who run organizations that operate in rural areas know that bringing connectivity is the beginning of a problem, not the beginning of a solution, because the minute I bring connectivity and I connect something to something, that needs to be maintained. And who does it and how it's done is a huge challenge. So this is another thing we are dealing with. So that's our Jaldi in a nutshell. Let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at in terms of divides. By the way, all the pictures that you will see are actual sites that our Jaldi works in. This one is in Uttarakhand, actually. So when we talk about rural areas, I always say there's this tautology. A rural area is rural because it's rural. What do I mean by this? There are reasons why areas are rural. They could be geographic, they could be social, they could be socioeconomic, and there could be a combination. Be it as it may, for a provider, this poses basic sets of challenges. There are technical challenges to reaching areas. Just, look at the mountains behind here on the picture. It's a little bit harder to reach those than to reach from where I'm sitting now in Defense Colony in Delhi, from here to Connaught Place, for example. There are economic challenges. In rural areas, income levels tend to be lower, and therefore the ability and willingness to pay is lower. So you're looking at, to start with, a basic problem. Supply is more costly and demand is lower, and the ability to pay is also lower. So it's already a thing that you need to bridge. Now the reality is that, of course, this leads to, as I said, less availability of services and higher costs, or no availability at all. And what happens at the moment in India, in the last couple of years, we have seen a very radical change in terms of pricing for the customers in India. Costs have dropped very, very significantly, by some accounts, by almost 85%. This is great news for those who are already connected. Again, if I sit in Defense Colony, I'm paying now 1/5 of what I used to pay 5 years ago. However, in the rural area under this tree where these guys are sitting, the cost of reaching them remains roughly the same. It's gone down a little bit, but remains the same. This means that those who have no access are actually looking at a growing gap, not at a narrowing gap. They're looking at a growing gap because the providers now have a cost challenge in addition to the challenges they faced before. So we're actually looking at a market that is as challenging as ever, probably more, in terms of reaching those areas that Air Jaldi tries to focus on. Again, in the parlance of connectivity or the urban-rural divide in India, we're talking about basically reaching tier 4 and below. So let's look at the realities as they are now, and Ritesh, you've touched upon it. Urban population in India is 34%, rural is roughly 66%. Broadband access is exactly almost a mirror image of that. 38% rural, 62% urban. So a huge task ahead of us, regardless of great strides that have been made. The second gap we're looking at, of course, is the gender gap. The first issue is ownership. We can see that this is all ITU data, widely available. Although, while 80% of men own mobile devices, only 41% of women own mobile devices. This is even worse or even more alarming when we talk about use. Men who have mobile access, of those who have mobile access, 36% use the internet, while 64% don't use it. Again, we can argue what usage means, but let's take it as it is for the purpose of this presentation. For women, it's 18% of those who are actually having access, of those 59%. So again, a yawning gap of usage, and again, Vishaka touched upon that earlier. What are the reasons? What we are finding out from work that we do on a day-to-day basis, and also from our discovery work leading to our work on the project, is that there's a combination. First of all, means just economic means. Can a woman have, or does a woman have the resources to enable connectivity, a device and a monthly connection? The second thing is when she has it, societal perceptions. It will not be a news to anybody, I think, on this forum to learn that in rural areas, women are prevented many times from using the phone because phone is a tool of evil. And you know, again, let's not pretend that the internet is only beneficial. The internet carries various issues. It needs to be dealt with. I don't believe in censorship in any form or shape, but there is that perception, and in rural areas even more so. And you know, women are effectively and actively prevented from accessing. We know that from experience. The third thing is self-perception. Do I actually have use for the internet? Is it contributing to anything? Again and again and again, people think that it might not benefit them in any way because they equate the internet to a social network. Again, I'm not going to talk about, you know, Facebook or Twitter or TikTok or whatever. You know, this is not a praising and bashing session here. But a lot of times people equate the internet with social forums, and it's much, much more than that, as we know. By the way, the picture here is children in a school that we connect about 50 kilometers from Ranchi. And these girls are actually using Wikipedia here. And this was not a stage thing. I was so shocked to actually see them using Wikipedia to search about Muslim communities that I took this picture about 3 or 4 years ago. Now, despite that bleak reality, we actually have emerging needs, and they are there and they grow all the time. And you know, again, we're emerging out of 2 years of the pandemic, and we see this just mushrooming. Economic needs, you know, I can use the internet to purchase, but I can also use the internet to produce. Education, all of us, or at least those of us who have brothers, sisters, kids who study, have struggled with the need to educate. Services, again, purchases and provision. Voice and presence, be it social media, just being there, or being able to actually represent yourself, especially in isolation. And look at the picture here, again, taken from one of the locations. It was not intended, but the women are on the receiving side of a desk where they're being provided services by basically men. There is no reason why this should be the case. I didn't have time to include a great video of some of our women entrepreneurs and women team members who are leading your Jaldi networks, but there's no reason why they can't sit on the other side. Now, this is the problem. Now, in order to approach any way of trying to begin to solve this, we need to have a clear problem statement and a clear solution statement. So I've gone through the problem. I'll try and get to the solutions. Ritesh, I have about 2.3 minutes, but I'm assuming that you're going to give me 2 more minutes.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so the program that we have developed for the WGDP USAID supported thing is called Productive Paths. And it is meant to address the challenges that I've outlined now. So the goal is pretty straightforward. First of all, to increase the number of women connected, but I want you to look at the word meaningful internet connectivity. The discussion is more and more centered around what meaningful connectivity means. We'll stick for a moment with the idea that it's anything that contributes to their societal, economic, and individual well-being. And I think all of the above are important. And when we looked at this and what it is that we do and how it is that we could contribute to this, we came with our set of tools, which we call C+3T. At the center of it all is connectivity. Connectivity is a necessary, if not sufficient condition to anything that's internet enabled. And connectivity needs to be affordable, needs to be stable, and needs to be sufficiently fast. Do not undermine any of these 3 cost factors, or any of these 3 factors. The second thing is tools. Again, if we want to move away from Facebook as my only main means of accessing what's called the internet, people need to know what tools are available there. Our program will provide them with, first of all, knowledge about what tools are there. There are hundreds, thousands of free tools, but there are also paid tools that are there and that are affordable. And we will provide knowledge and access, and to some extent subsidy for these tools. Tools without training are, again, a wonderful thing. So I bought a car, it's parked in the garage. I bought the access to whatever tools I have to enrich the car. I don't know how to drive. Somebody needs to train me. Training will be a part of what we do throughout the program. It will be mostly online, but there will be face-to-face interaction. Wherever Air Jaldi works, we have teams on the ground, and these teams will touch our recipients. I touched upon the issue of tech support. The idea that I gave you a tool, I trained you on it, I gave you connectivity, and voila, you will now discover how to use the internet and you know, you go forth and create a small scale or large scale business, and that'll be it. By the way, on the upper right corner, there's a woman with a computer. She's running a small common service center that Vishaka was talking about. This is what a CSC looks in a place like Jharkhand. This is not a fancy outfit. Now, this woman needs to be trained. Somebody needs to tell her how to maintain her batteries. If the computer fails, how do you fix it? Below, there's a small scale enterprise out of Uttarakhand where people are producing products and selling them online. How do they do marketing? How do they run it? It needs to be helped. Tech support needs to be given to maintain those tools, and we will provide those to our recipients. What are the outputs? We are aiming, again, millions are a great number. We haven't yet reached the point of where we're able as Air Jaldi to provide millions. I hope the time will come. But we are planning to reach about 15,000 recipients there with a combination. Some will get basic training, some will get connectivity plus basic training, some will get connectivity plus basic training, plus advanced training and support. This is not going to be done alone. This is going to be done with an ecosystem that we are working on. We already have many of these linkages, but we will working to develop further linkages with some of them are recipients, some of them are contributors, some of them are both, hence two directional arrows. Again, I don't have time to go over each one of these segments. The important thing at the end of it all is the outcomes. Because if at the end of our work, we will only be able to say, hey, listen, we touched 15,000, 20,000, 5 million, it doesn't matter, people. But we cannot demonstrate to ourselves and others that we have actually contributed to making this a meaningful output. We haven't done much. I'm a great believer in goals because I think goals inform outcomes, and outcomes are really what we're looking at here. And what we're looking at here, again, just quickly going back, we're looking at this concentric set of circles, moving from theory and provisioning to actually enabling women to either make a useful and profitable business, help educate themselves and others, or develop and enhance their voices. Women and you know, through voicing their needs, through accessing services that they're deserving of, and what have you. And this is, again, going to be our ultimate test to ourselves. In summary, again, I think we need to all keep in mind that when we go and reach rural areas, you know, we first of all need that stable connectivity, and it is still not there in many areas, as you all will know. Connectivity needs to be supported, and once you have the connectivity and the support, you need to make that a meaningful proposition. For whatever it's worth, Air Jaldi, again, as I said, works in 9 states and continues to expand. I'll be happy to explore with any one of you the possibility of us helping you to create a meaningful project. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mikey. One of the things I did not mention, and let me mention it now about Mikey, that I think he sort of mentioned it in the passing. He, among other things, Air Jaldi is also the recipient of a USAID and Microsoft Airband grant. under the program called Women's Global Development and Prosperity, WGDP Fund, which Mike talked about. And many of these things that Mikey was discussing are going to be implemented as part of the program. Correct, Mikey?
Indeed, indeed. And for whatever it's worth, I should mention, as they call proper disclosure, that Ritesh was involved with the program from very, very early stages, in many ways helping us to frame some of these problems and their solutions.
It's been a pleasure, Mikey. Thank you so much. And I'm sure, I mean, I do have a few questions for you. I'm sure the participants also have a lot of questions. So without any further ado, let me now open the floor for the Q&A session. I'm requesting participants who have questions for either or both of our speakers to use the raise hand function so that we can identify you and ask you to share your question. Once I request you to ask your question, please unmute yourself, state your name and the organization you represent as part of your introduction. Mention who the question is directed at, and then ask the question. To start with, maybe I can just start with, in fact, okay, there are questions coming in already. Maybe we should start with that. Ajita has a couple of questions. The first one for Vishaka. Vishaka, can you talk a little bit about the EasyGov platform you mentioned?
Sure. So EasyGov is our platform to provide access to government welfare scheme, and now this platform is enabled on various mobile applications. So a lot of people in rural India are still not rural, or even the urban centers they're not aware of the various welfare schemes which are launched by the government. So it's very important to give them a platform to discover all the schemes. Sometimes I need to know whether I'm eligible for a particular government welfare scheme. So those criteria are clearly outlined. It's a very intuitive platform. We are planning to support more regional languages going forward. We are supporting a lot of state governments, and also creating white label solutions of this platform, because some states have a different model and they want us to dedicatedly work with them and give them this interface for spreading awareness and applying for government schemes. So it's an end-to-end platform, and at some states we are also doing the provisioning and fulfillment of those schemes, and connecting the end users to the fulfillment centers to take it forward. So services like PAN, Aadhaar card, a lot of these services also we are planning to integrate within the platform. But GovTech is an area which needs focus, and that's why Geo is channelizing its efforts to drive greater adoption of e-governance and GovTech services across all segments.
Thank you, Vishaka.
Great, thank you so much. Ajita, you want to ask the other question that you had for Mikey?
Yes. So Mikey, I'm unsure if you covered this because I lost connectivity for a bit. But when you were talking about C+3T and we were talking about tech support, so I wanted to understand what that process is like and how to sustain those efforts beyond a certain point of time.
It's an excellent question. Because at the end of the day, what I was alluding to was a relatively labor-intensive process. The hope is that the initial training plus the initial handholding plus FAQ-like services will lead to a lighter touch. Our experience, unfortunately, has shown us that it's not that easy. So our solution to that problem, with a limited number of recipients, relatively speaking, is we already have a customer care, a 24/7 customer care. So they will have a sub number that they will always be able to reach. There will be a web UI that recipients will have access to, that will have answers. But it's going to be a combination of light and heavy touch and training, if you will. I wish I had something easier as a solution, but I don't think there is one.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Ajita. So, in fact, I've been sort of writing down a few questions for you, and we have a few hands, but let me take this opportunity to ask my question. Both of you in your own ways talked about the importance of content. Mike used the word tools, Vishaka did use the word content, talked about the importance of vernacular content as well. And on the other hand, both of you also talked about the economic consideration. And when I say this, I say it in the context of rural women getting connected. So any thoughts around that, how you all are planning to sort of, basically respond to these barriers as you go deeper in. Any thoughts on that?
If I may just, to your point, Ritesh, one of the things that, working with on-ground teams and with our partners, we realize that the needs and preferences of women are very different compared to, generally, what men have. So women tend to prioritize what is something, which is more socially acceptable. So needs around education, health, those digital solutions are more relevant for them. In fact, this time around, when we're working on our digital skills program, we've massively spent time on ground with teams to understand, what are the need gaps. And one of the common themes that everybody, and this is across rural and urban, is that, they want to prioritize education. So all these rural women, how can my child get online? How can, I make him attend his classes? How can, is there a content module that I can show him to improve? So that was very surprising that, and the focus, especially from rural parts, I thought it's a urban phenomenon, but a lot of women, they are actually wanting their children to get access to digital education. So that's a focus area for us. Second thing, Ritesh, what we've learned is in rural areas, whatever we do, we have to keep it very simple. And that's the philosophy behind Geo. When we launched also, we simplified the complex tariff plans and structures, and that was the first thing, the chairman said, our chairman, he directed that it's complex, it has too many caveats, people will not understand. It has to be simple. So that same logic, we apply in all our solutions and applications. We are increasing our focus on chatbots because, going forward, if you to get the next 500 million people in the digital realm, we have to have voice-centric technologies. Speech recognition and LLP are another important areas. And then, in addition, I mentioned that, all the offerings around health, education, livestock is a very, very important need. People need to improve their yield from livestock, and they need solutions around it. Agriculture, and we can provide simple solutions right from farm advisory, weather alerts, and sensor-based technologies. Of course, there's a cost to it, but we are trying to work on an ecosystem which makes these services, more scalable and economically affordable for rural communities. So that's what I would like to say. And over to Michael if he wants to add based on his experience.
Ritesh, I missed the part of the question. If you could just quickly summarize it.
I was basically talking about the relevance of content, which in getting women to start using it more. And obviously it sort of becomes more challenging because we're talking about a group which has a lesser purchasing power. So from that perspective, any thoughts that you have, wanted to share?
How to increase access to content? Is that your question? The barrier to access?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
again, from where we are, this is where the issue of tools come into the game. What we see more often than not is that the perception of no need comes from the perception of what the internet is. Now, it's not going to be a magic bullet where you just open the spigot, you show them a few apps and they'll understand what the internet is. Trust me, I'm still struggling and I find tools every day, So no one of us is any different. I think again, I'm going to toll on Vishika's coattails on this one. You need to identify the needs and you need to translate those needs to tools. That's going to be our role in this project. So if you are a woman and you say, I hate to use that example, but I'm stitching kurtas and pajamas and I'm trying to sell those. Is there anything in which you can help me to think? Or I'm making achar and can I do anything apart from doing it for my family? There are means and ways of doing it. Education is such a low-lying fruit, but let's not forget that education is one aspect. And again, as things are, when schools open again, and I hope it's going to be tomorrow. Actually, my kids have just walked in, hopefully not into the frame. Some of it will go away. Digital education will not go away, but the challenge for us will then be how to bring education into the classroom. And that's another struggle that's been going on for 15 years. But just to summarize, we as leaders of these programs need to challenge ourselves with translating need statements to digital content. I think that's where we can be most helpful.
Completely agree to that, Mike. It's very important to take into consideration what they want in that sense and see how we can convert it into usable information and content we can provide. I think we have a hand raised. Mr. Abhishek Banerjee, please go ahead. You have a question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ritesh sir, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Abhishek Banerjee. I am from Anudhi Foundation. I work as a regional manager here in Anudhi Foundation. I based on Ranchi. And so I would like to thank Air Jaldi entire team, because Air Jaldi is one of the leading internet service provider for Jharkhand. It has a better reach in the rural area as well as the tribal areas. Lots of beneficiaries here. They are accessing internet, and they are using this internet in their daily lives, especially for FLN tools. Now students are using network from rural and tribal areas also. We are really, I want to thank Air Jaldi for their services. My concern is here, in very rural and the tribal part of our Jharkhand, or especially I say in Ranchi. If we go to the east of the Ranchi, there are lots of villages. I have seen that their youths are accessing internet. Yes, they are getting skills, and after that they are finding their jobs and migrating themselves in other cities or other metropolitan cities, you can say. So if tribal economy or the rural economy concerned, so my question is that this migration is happening permanently. So they are not coming back to their villages. Lots of villages are only having 20% of male candidates, those who are earning in different cities, and finally they are setting themselves. Jaldi is planning to improve tribal economy or the rural economy here in Jharkhand. Although there is a scope to create livelihood here, if Air Jaldi can do something like that, Air Jaldi must have lots of clients, those who can provide.
Sorry, Abhishek, I just wanted to sort of interrupting, but what's the question?
Yeah, question is that what is the planning? What is the plan of Air Jaldi to develop this rural and the tribal economy in here in Jharkhand or the other places as well?
It's an excellent question. In a world where money is no object, as you may have realized, ideas are not a shortage of, are not in shortage in Air Jaldi. Resources are always. But to try and answer that question seriously, I think there are two ways to answer it, Abhishek. One thing is, as an organization, you need to choose your focus area. We have opinions about everything from graphic design to women's empowerment, but we need to choose. Air Jaldi is an internet service provider. Our main role is provision of infrastructure and supporting meaningful uses of that infrastructure. When it comes to economic empowerment, I am acutely aware of the problem that you mentioned, not least because we recruit, train, and retain people from areas where we work. And if you I know that Anudeep is connected to us in certain locations. You know that our teams in Jharkhand are people from Jharkhand and from rural areas. We're not talking about Urmanji. We're talking about, small villages, below Kanke and Angara and so The only hope that we can offer is to have the enabling conditions to do it. To borrow from precision agriculture, Vishaka, I come from an agricultural background actually. In order to grow a plant, there needs to be fertilizer, there needs to be water, and there needs to be sufficient conditions to do it. My hope is that internet connectivity, and again, stable internet connectivity, can keep some of the people in rural areas. The hope that we can keep everybody from out migration to Ranchi and to keep them from Ranchi to Pune and from Pune to San Francisco, to an extent, yes. But the best hope is to provide them with the conditions that enable them to have meaningful economic livelihood in their areas.
Thank you,
Thank
Mikey.
you. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Abhishek. Yeah, I think we have time for one last question. There are a few questions on the chat, but I'm going to just pick one. This is a question for Vishaka. I'll just read it. It says, you raised a very important point about keeping things simple for digital resources in rural India. This is something we are working hard on in our digital platforms for women and girls. You mentioned using chat boxes. Can you give some more practical examples of simple tools that work well with the rural communities platforms? This is from Lisa from the Nandi Foundation. Hi, Lisa. Good to see you.
Hey, Lisa. So, Lisa, to your question, what I was implying is it's chatbots. They are essentially not chatbot. Yeah, they are conversational AI tools. Which are very effective for rural areas. For instance, you can set up a farmer's help desk and digitally connect people over a WhatsApp and voice recognition tools. People can ask in their own language. They can ask those specific questions. So there are multiple use cases for voice recognition, AI, conversational AI, and we've implemented, in fact, voice tools in our geophone, wherein you can simply, if you want to search for a railway booking, you can actually, instead of typing, because the literacy levels in rural areas are very, very low. So it's always better to, you can at least talk it out, and the AI engines or the machine learning algorithms, they actually translate that into a text, and you get a response. So that is what I was talking about, because speech recognition tools are going to be very important given the literacy barriers that we have. And in all the applications or products, we should have an option to give a voice-based chat option to subscribers, so that they can leverage the benefits of that application and solution, without having to struggle with typing or that complexity of a smartphone. So that's essentially what I meant, and that's about it.
Thank you, Vishaka. I think that's all the time we have today for this session. So I wish we had a little more time for discussions. I know there are a few questions we have not been able to answer, but Mikey has very generously already shared his email on the chat box. If you have any further questions for him, please do write to him, or feel free to write to me, and I can forward whatever you feel comfortable with. Same with Vishaka. If you have any questions for her, write to Ajita, write to me, and we will be happy to sort of find a way to connect both of you. A note of gratitude to Vishaka and Michael. Thank you both for taking the time to attend and for sharing your experiences with all of us. It's been really, really helpful, and I think there's a lot of learning that both of you have jointly been able to give us. I also wanted to thank all the attendees, and wanted to point out again that if you have any further questions, write to us either directly to Mikey, or Ajita and I are always happy to facilitate. And yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.